Hey, everybody, and welcome to Missing Chapters. We're so excited you're here with us today, taking time out of your day to join us to talk about this really important topic. I'm especially excited to have Kiki back. She was with us a few months ago talking about psychological safety, and I'm excited to go a little bit deeper on this session. If you're new to Missing Chapters, this is a series that we do basically to talk about those missing chapters within the HR book of that don't always get talked about. We also share tips and trips, ticks. Oh my gosh, tips and tricks. And I'm tongue tied with this cold. Blame the cold. We're just really excited to have you all joining us today so we can go deeper. And so this is an open chat forum. Kiki and I are very comfortable with answering any questions on the fly. So if there's something that comes up and you want to go deeper on, or something that you've been thinking about that you want us to address, Kiki is all in. So don't be shy. Okay, and if you're new and have never heard of Nava, we are on a mission to fix healthcare. And when I tell this to people, they're always like, "What? That seems very big." And it is. It's very big, but we know that the system is broken, and we are on a mission to provide affordable care to the 160 million Americans who get their healthcare from an employee-sponsored healthcare program. And so we're disrupting that space using technology to make it more affordable. So, I'm Anna. I'm going to be the host here. Kiki's the star. And Kiki, just as a quick intro to her, she's a leadership coach, incredible speaker, just changing how organizations can tackle big, complex problems. And especially in this conversation, she was going to be talking us through how we can go a little bit deeper on adjusting and repairing trust around when maybe it's been broken. So, Kiki, do you want to do? I know that probably wasn't justice, but do you
That
want
was
to do a quick
great.
intro?
It's always my favorite thing to hear someone else talk about what I do because I talk about it all the time. And so to get the reflection of how other people think about it, there's always something that comes up and I'm like, I do that. Yeah, that's
Yes.
also true. Um, I wouldn't have said I was a great speaker, so thank you so much for that. I
Oh
might
my
add that
gosh,
in.
that's top of my list.
I
Yes,
love
top
it.
of my
I
list.
love it. Yes, so I'm a leadership coach. I do leadership consulting as well. I have an eye towards burnout prevention, mainly because I've gone through burnout multiple times and it is something that can be prevented. Um, and really, I think my goal is to give a non-judgmental space to people to be more intentional so they can take that intentional action towards whatever their goals are. I think we're moving so quickly in this world. And as humans, I don't think we're set up, our nervous systems aren't set up to take in so much information and be moving so quickly. We're not AI, we're not robots. And so that's a really good thing. But it's also something that I think really impacts how we work day to day. And so, whether we're talking about psychological safety, or we're talking about how to prevent burnout, or we're just talking about communication and how to give feedback in a way that is better received, or how to deal with conflict. I think, conflict is natural. It's something that means there's engagement. If there's no
Mm,
conflict, there's probably not much engagement. It might not actually be a
mm.
psychologically safe space if there isn't any conflict. And so I think this is such a cool topic for me to talk about because it's not something that was necessarily part of my background, but it was something I got really good feedback on from leading teams in the past. So having a really safe space where folks felt like they could bring their full selves to work, folks felt like they could come up with ideas that might be bonkers, but no, there was no judgment, right? It was like the more ideas we bring in, the more holistic decisions we can make. Um,
Mm.
so, yeah, I think this is such a great topic, and I'm excited to dive a little deeper with you today. Thank you for having me back. It's such a compliment. And yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thanks for everyone who's putting in the chat where they're dialing in from. So it's nice to have you. And keep doing that if you're still joining us and want to tell us what area you're zooming in from. Represent your area. Okay, so like Kiki said, we chatted about this a couple months ago, psychological safety. Today we're going to pick up and keep going from there, going deeper, focusing on what happens when psychological safety, gets tested in real life. And I think, Kiki, when we chatted about this last time, there was a lot of questions, a lot of interest, and so I'm glad we're going a little bit deeper because I think let's set the stage here, but I think we don't know what to do. So maybe we understand. So maybe just a quick high level on psychological safety, and then we can talk about like where it starts, what do we do when it starts to slip in real life, and why these everyday moments of tension are so defining for culture. So I know it's kind of a loaded question, but I think just to bring people along, if they weren't at our last
Yeah.
session.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a recording for the last session too. So if anyone's interested in checking out the
True.
recording,
Yes.
let me know,
Maybe
or
maybe
let
Autumn
us
can
know.
put that in the chat. Autumn, if you wouldn't mind
Yeah.
finding that YouTube link for us.
Yeah, absolutely. But just to kind of sum up, I can't remember everything we talked about in that session, but to kind of give a high
Yeah.
level around
Just
psychological safety, um, Amy Edmonston has a really good definition. I'm not going to get it perfect, but it's basically the belief that someone can bring their full self to work. They're not going to feel punished or humiliated by bringing in their questions or their concerns or making mistakes. They feel like they can actually bring their full self to work, bring questions, comments, ideas, and not have anything negative happen to them because of that. Um, I think what this really means for leaders is creating the environment where people feel safe enough to take risks. We can't be innovative if we aren't willing to take risks. So if you want to have an innovative organization, creating the environment where people feel safe to take those risks, to share their truths. We all have our own lived experience. We bring that. Whether we say we do or not, I think in the Industrial Revolution, it was this concept of like, oh, work is work. You leave your everything else at home, leave it at the door, and just come in and like do the thing, right? And maybe that's great in theory because emotions do make things more complex. People are complex, but there's no such thing as leaving it at the door. And if there is, you're not getting the full extent of someone's experience or ideas or opinions or questions. You're not going to make the best decisions. Um, and so I think being able to admit when you make a mistake, accountability ties really closely in with psychological safety. If you have an accountable organization, more than likely the organization is a safe space to be accountable. We all have things that we are good at, and we all have things and areas where we're not so great, and we make mistakes. We are human. So being able to own that, figure out how to do things differently, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Um,
um,
yeah. And, I think also, especially for leaders, we think that like, oh, I'm a leader, so I have to have all the answers, or I need to do this perfectly. But it's
mm,
not about doing it perfectly. Like you can show up and
mm,
say, hey, that meeting didn't actually go the way that I intended it to go. And I'm not quite sure how to fix that, but I want to share what my intention was. And I want to check in and see how I can do better next time. I mean, if a leader said that to me, I would have so much respect for them, not the
oh,
other way
right, yeah,
around. But I think because it
yeah,
feels vulnerable in your body to be like, I don't know what I did wrong. Here's what I did. I'm sorry. Like that feels vulnerable. So it feels like maybe someone would judge us for that. Um,
hmm
so I think psychological safety is interesting because it's not something where there's a specific framework. Like with feedback, there's a pretty specific framework that you can use for feedback, and it
hmm
works, a good 85% of the time, 95% of the time, as long as you're authentic. Um, but psychological safety is interesting because we're all different. And so it looks
mm,
different. It looks different in different organizations, but there are some similarities. So I think we'll talk about some of those today, but hopefully that's a good
yeah,
general overview.
yes. No, I think that's great. I think it's good just to set that stage of like, when we say, well, psychological safety starts to slip in real life, it's good to just have that baseline of how at least how we have talked about it in the past so
Mhm.
people can follow with us. So, okay, great. That was a great setting the stage. We dropped the link in there. So, Uh, if you want to go rewatch that or watch it. But today we're going to talk about, yeah, what happens when it starts to slip in real life and why, you know, how can we repair that? And I think Kiki, there's no one better to talk about this than you. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Yeah. So I think really when we're talking about repairing psychological safety, I think actually the first part of the conversation is a little bit more about proactive. So how do you set that environment? Or how do we think about culture? How do we think about building culture? I'm sure there's people that are in this room that have been a part of a really good culture, and there might have been people that have been part of cultures that aren't so great or are toxic in some way. Um, Ultimately, I think the goal is we so I'm going to back up real quick. We when we talk about culture, a lot of people will immediately start to think about mission statements or core
Mm,
values, the things that are
hmm
written on the walls in the office or in the employee handbook when you first join. Um, and these are all really important. So I don't want to downgrade them. I think they are really, really important to set a standard for the company, but the culture itself is not defined only by those statements. The culture is defined by the micro moments that happen on a day to day basis. So
mm,
the small water cooler conversations, the small interactions throughout the office. I've spoken with
mm,
clients in the past who they're not bringing in something that's like, oh, in this big meeting that we had, it was like, oh, I went into the snack room and I had this really weird encounter with this colleague. And I think that maybe this situation over here has caused some tension between us. How do I approach
mm,
that? How do I resolve that? How do I repair it? When I don't even really know what the tension is, I just know that they made a really kind of offhanded comment that made me feel kind of bad in the snack room when I was getting chips at 3 p.m. Right. And so, like, culture
hmm
is really shaped in those small moments. And I think the reason for this is because our nervous systems don't internalize statements. So we can say, this is what our culture is. Our nervous system doesn't react to the words, right? Our nervous system reacts to the real emotional moments that we experience. So
mm,
whether, we're having a moment where we disagree, and our nervous system is like, I don't agree with that. Is it safe here for me to say, hey, I have some
mm,
concerns about that way forward? Or, can we talk about some of these concerns so we can mitigate some of the risks that might come up if we do move forward in that way? Um,
hmm
do we feel safe enough to speak up? Do we feel safe enough to disagree? Do we feel safe enough to own our mistakes? That's what builds the actual culture. Um, so I think I just want to state that first, because I think that when we talk
hmm
about repairing, um, it's really easy sometimes to go, oh, but we're a company that's collaborative. And, that's great. But when we think about repairing something where we're thinking about our nervous systems, right? How do we make it
mm,
safe for our nervous system to come into work? How do we make it safe to kind of go back to someone and say, hey, that interaction, I don't think happened the way that I wanted it to happen. Um, I
mm,
think it's our nervous systems that we're repairing. It's not so much just the words. And I think that makes it
hmm
really difficult for a lot of people, because
Wow.
people are like,
Yeah.
tell me what to say. And it's like, well, it is partly what you say, but it's a lot of how you say it and how you hold that space, that matters.
Yeah. And like with the nervous system, you don't know all the other factors going in to that individual, which makes it very fluid to try to fix. You have to
Yeah.
adapt to that person, meeting them where they are, especially if, they've had this happen to them multiple times, or maybe they
Yeah.
don't even realize it's happening because they've never
Yeah.
had it happen. And so, like you said, don't even know how to describe it or what to do
Yep.
with that. Or oftentimes, I think it just gets ignored, which
Yeah.
then perpetuates maybe the slipping of the safety because they don't even realize
Yeah.
it until maybe it's so late that it's damaging. Um,
Yeah. That ignoring piece, just to comment on that real quick. I think
yeah.
sometimes I don't think that that's actually an intent. Like it's not someone's intention to be like, "Ooh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to ignore it." Like,
Hmm.
and sometimes it is. Sometimes someone's like, "I don't know how to deal with that, so I'm just going to hope it goes away and brush it under the rug." Like sometimes there is that kind of
Hmm.
thought process, right?
Hmm.
But I think a lot of times it's more so, oh, I'm conflicted. Like the nervous system is like, I'm conflict adverse. This feels icky. I'm just not going to focus on it. I'm going to focus over here. And so it's not like I think this is where coaching comes in, right? Like when someone is
Yes.
in a coaching session with me and they're like, oh, well, I think it's fine. I'm like, is it fine? Let's go into that a
Yeah,
little bit
let's
more. Like,
unravel this. Yeah.
uh-huh. And I think
Uh-huh.
it's always those moments where someone goes, I have to have that conversation, don't I? I'm like, yeah, I think you do. And then it becomes,
Yeah.
how do I have that conversation? What's the best way for me to put my best foot forward? Most people have really good intentions. I've yet to meet someone in my coaching clients that doesn't have good intention. They don't,
Mm.
everyone that I've met, everyone that I've talked with, they all have really positive intentions, but we are human and we have emotions and
Hmm.
it is complex and our past lived experience does matter and we do bring it in even if we don't want to. So to
Hmm.
your point, I think it's that fluidity of adjusting person by person can feel really overwhelming, but I think it all starts with curiosity. It all
Mm.
starts with, hey, I have some feedback for you, and it's coming from a place where I really want to see you succeed, or I want to see this project succeed, some sort of like um, mutual goal that we have, right?
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
but I want to make sure that I can give you this feedback in a way that's positive. So before I share anything, I'm happy to share it now. I'm happy to share it via email. I'm happy to just wait and share it in our next one-on-one. It's not urgent. Um,
Mm.
but asking someone, how do you want feedback? Even better is to have like proactive designed alliance conversations where folks can come together, whoever you're working with, whether it's a new project team or it's employees. And you can do this at any time. Like even if the employee you've had for 5 years, you can be like, hey, I watched it. You can
Oh.
blame it on me. I watched this session and this girl Kiki told me it's really great to have design alliance conversations, but go and have
Um,
those conversations. It's the beginning of the year. It's a great place, like time to do it as well. Like, hey, I want to know, how do you best receive feedback? Because when I give you feedback, it comes from a really good place, but feedback can be hard. It can be hard to hear. And so I want to be able to give it to you in the best way possible. Or
mm.
how do you best communicate? Are you someone who likes to kind of internalize stuff and think about it and then come back and have a discussion?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
I'm the opposite. I want to talk about it right now. You bring something up, like I'm ready to hash it out and talk about it. And the other person, like if you're with someone else who's like, whoa, 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 like I need some
Right.
time to
Yeah.
process. That's my relationship
Hmm.
with my husband. I've had to learn. Uh, he needs space and time to process before we have the
Uh-huh.
conversation, right? So like bringing it up and then being able to set a time for us to further discuss it.
Hmm.
But you don't know that automatically about people. And I think we oftentimes assume someone else is like us, and that's how we
Yep.
typically act towards others. Um, because we were told in kindergarten to treat others the way you want to be treated. And I think it just internalized somewhere really deep.
Yeah.
Um,
The
anyway,
mirroring
sorry.
of, yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's good. And I think that helps kind of like set the tone for, you know, this other framework we're going to get into
yeah.
around psychological safety and how to repair that. But I just want to call out the fact that, okay, so you called those designed alliance conversations?
Yes, I did not
Okay,
make
I
that up,
love.
and I'm unsure who to give credit to. I learned about it actually by a man named Ren Vera. I'm not sure if he made it up either, but he was the one who taught it at Airbnb.
Oh,
And I just love
oh,
the concept of it, right? You're
yeah,
designing an alliance with someone else. You're reminding them that, hey, this is my intention when I share
yeah,
feedback or when I delegate something. But I want to make sure it lands. So like it's all about
totally.
curiosity, asking questions, and um, yeah, those designed alliance conversations are great. It's very proactive too.
Totally. And it feels very personable.
Yeah.
Like for you, I'm listening to you and what your needs are. Because I think, yeah, when we talk about psychological safety slipping, it's probably because they didn't do this or they forgot.
Yeah,
Or a
there's
new
so
leader
much.
came in and it starts to because I think that's when sometimes when I reflect back on my own experience, I think back to what you said, no one's really ill intent is to like attack somebody or do something. It's just a miscommunication. Like 95% it's just miscommunications. And so I like the fact that you're like, hey, yeah, you need to set that up. But if it hasn't happened yet, you know,
Mhm.
or maybe it did happen and the company had great intentions for like this culture to be amazing. And but then all of a sudden they hire in new people, which is, I don't know, I'd love to hear your take on sometimes where you can start to see the like avoid those pitfalls before it even slips. But it's usually a new leadership coming in. They haven't been indoctrinated or have seen how the culture can work like that. And I think there
Yep.
is an element, just human beings, we immediately want to show value, we immediately want to do this and this, and it's like, oh, actually that's going to change the culture, and that's going to maybe adjust some of the safety space that we've already created. And so even though they're ambitious and want to do well, it oftentimes is counterintuitive and actually can cause the psychological safety to slip, especially because it's a new
Yeah.
person. And now you have to
Yeah.
build that trust with that person. It's not the company. And so,
Yep.
um,
So a couple things. I think
yeah.
first, I think you're totally right. I think that with those designed alliance conversations, if that's something that's almost required when you come in as a leader, hey, this is part of your onboarding is to have these designed alliance conversations with these people, right? This is how I work. This is how you work. How do we work together?
Mm,
Having those conversations up front, because if you tell me, if I have that conversation with you and you tell me, hey, I really like time to process, I don't like being put on the spot, so I'd much rather have you send me an email with some of the feedback points so that I can digest it and ask, think about questions that I have, and then bring it to our one-on-one and have a real discussion about it. That's how I would like to receive feedback. Okay, great. So if I then do that the next time I have feedback for you, positive or constructive, I'm building that trust with you because I listened to what you said and I took action based on what you said. Right. And I could even
hmm
say that again. Hey, I know you said that you prefer feedback via writing. I just wanted to send you a quick email and say it was so great to have you do that presentation today. You did such a great job. Everyone was so engaged. Thank you so much for doing this. If you want to chat more about it in our one on one, I'm there for it. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, they listened to me and their actions, actions speak louder than words. Not only
hmm
did they say, oh, yeah, I'll do that, but they actually did it. And so I think that's a huge proactive piece of this. I think the other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that I talk about leadership not so much in terms of someone's role or title or level, but more so their influence and the impact that they have within the organization. So you can really lead from anywhere, right? You could be a brand new
hmm
employee and you could have leadership qualities and really lead a team, right? Not from a management
hmm
perspective,
Right. Yeah.
um, but really influence the people around you. We had people that joined Airbnb that were like from the big tech companies. It was like when people were like, oh, Airbnb is a thing after everyone was like, that will never work. And then we started hiring like ex Facebook and ex Google and, all these
Mm,
folks that had so much experience. I was a surgery scheduler before Airbnb. So, like, at heck, what? Like, I didn't really know what I was doing. It was just faking it till I made it in the beginning. And so some of these people came in and they weren't necessarily leaders of me. They were sometimes my peers, they were sometimes on my team, but they showed up as
mm,
leaders. They had impact, they had influence, not just with me, but with other people within the organization, really positive impact and influence. Um,
hmm
and I think teaching that within an organization, I think is another piece of this, because if you teach that, and if you live that, right? I think teaching everyone at any level, how do you show up as a leader? How do you receive feedback as a leader? How do you give feedback as a leader? How do you manage up? Right. I think then when you're
mm,
bringing someone new in, no matter who is interacting with that person, if that person is showing up in a way that doesn't jive with the culture or is negatively impacting in some way, there's not this fear of like, ooh, but they're a manager, so I can't say anything. There's this
mm,
like, hey, I have some feedback for you. I know that you're new to the organization. I'd love to share a couple things with you if it works for you. Do you want to set up a one-on-one? Would you rather have it an email? Again, Designed Alliance conversation.
Love
Um,
it. Love it.
and then be able to have that conversation because then they're hearing that information and it's not this like, oh, but it's a new leader, so no one's going to say anything, but everyone's going to stop talking and everyone's going to turn away. Um,
Yeah.
that's really where it's a slippery slope. Once that starts, it's hard to regain that trust again. And so if you just have that one person who's willing to be like, hey, I have some feedback for you. And hopefully it's more than one person. And this person
Uh-huh.
gets it from a couple different angles and they're like, oh shit, I need to adjust, right?
Yep.
In some way. Yeah.
Okay, so you've already started to outline, okay, what are some of those early signals? Let's just list those off so
Yeah.
everyone's like, okay, easily can identify. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, what would you say, like, what are those early signs that psychological safety is slipping before it fully breaks down? In this example with the
Yeah.
leader, it was like they were, behavior was not aligned with maybe they hadn't had the conversation, the designed alliance conversations yet.
Yeah.
So they came in, a little bit guns a-blazing. But if a culture already exists where it is safe,
Yeah.
people hopefully will give that feedback. If they stop giving that feedback, I guess that's an early sign.
Absolutely.
What else would
Um,
you say?
I think that it's really there's a couple different things. So I think first, I think just engagement in general. There's engagement goes up and down, right? Like that's normal within an organization, especially like after a really busy season.
Yeah.
Engagement can go down a
Yeah.
little bit, and that is normal. And so I don't want to
It's like,
like make any, if there's any HR leaders in this room, I don't want anyone to like panic, right? We're just coming off of the holidays and all of that. And so it might look different for different organizations, but just knowing what that flow typically looks like for your organization and noting where there might be like a massive shift, right? So engagement is a huge one. Changes in energy, again, like these things are normal and they happen. But if you notice that
mm,
you've made a change within an organization, maybe you've made a big decision to shift the initiative, or the goal of the organization, or you've brought on new leadership. I think after every change, really paying attention to how that change is impacting the vibe, the energy, the engagement.
mm,
Um, are people still asking questions? Are they still showing up accountable for their actions? Are they
mm,
still having those uncomfortable conversations, those repair conversations? Those are all signs that psychological safety is still intact. So if those are not present, that would be a sign that it's starting to break down in some way.
mm.
And I think it's really easy to be like, well, maybe it's just, Kiki said that it's natural to go up and down. So we'll just wait it out and see. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I think calling out the obvious is a really good way. I know I'm kind of getting into actually how to repair, how to identify, and what to do next. But it's okay to notice, hey, I've noticed, hey, team. I've noticed that our team meetings have kind of fallen a little flat, or we haven't really, I haven't heard as many ideas from you all. I know we're just out of the holidays, so it could just be that, but I just wanted to check in. How's everyone feeling?
Mm, hmm.
Right? Like
Pulse
just being a
check.
pulse
Yeah.
check, like just,
Yeah.
it's
Love that.
again, it's like being a human. I think it's so easy sometimes. Our
Yeah.
nervous system is like, okay, we got to get the things done, right? And it's like so easy to not
Yes.
focus on
Guilty.
the human side. Um, and the human side is complex and hard. And so, you know, it's easy
Messy.
to
Depend.
avoid, right?
Yeah. It's hard to
But
measure
yeah,
too, because you're
it's
like,
hard to
I don't
measure.
know how this person. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But I think ultimately one of the biggest things that I would talk about that I have talked about either in coaching sessions or in presentations with clients has been really focusing on your own intuition. We have mirror neurons in our brain. And so if there's tension in a room, that feeling where like you walk into a room and nothing bad is happening in the room, but you can feel the tension when you walk into it and you're like, ugh, right? Like
Yeah.
those are our mirror neurons. So even if we don't
Mm-hmm.
know for a fact that there was tension, maybe right before you got in the room, someone said something that, turned someone else off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we can feel that, right? And so pay attention to it. And it's okay. I think
Hmm.
oftentimes we think, again, as leaders, we have to solve it. Oh, well, if I identify it, I need to solve it.
Mm.
No, no, not, there's no need to solve it in the moment. It's more important to be able to say, hey, I feel like there's a little tension here. How are things going? Where do we want to go next? Do we want to table this? Do we want to come back to it in our next team meeting? Do we want to
Mm.
talk one-on-one about this and then we can move forward? What would be best for folks? I think just calling
Mhm.
out the tension, like notice what you're feeling, call it out. The best
Mm.
case scenario is people are like, oh, no, no, no. We were talking about this thing and it's a little stressful because we're trying to get it done by Friday, but we're good. We're good. Everything's good. Okay, great. Like, let's move on. But if someone's like,
Mm.
no, everything's fine, like right? Like,
You can feel that. Yeah.
yeah. So I think just like trusting your own intuition and trusting the fact that if there is tension, if you're feeling that, if you're feeling like there's sudden silence from someone who's typically very engaged, or body language, right? Like body language is like, I think it's 80% of our communication or something crazy like that. But if someone is leaning in and they're having this conversation and someone says something and all of a sudden that person has their arms crossed and is totally leaned back
So,
and
yeah.
like bodily disengaged from the conversation, that says something.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not something you want to call out in the session, right? Like that's the other thing is it's not, if you're in a group and someone does that, they're already kind of in a defensive mode, body language wise, potentially.
Hmm.
At that point, their prefrontal cortex, that rational brain, is offline. Their amygdala is in control, which is like our threat center. Um,
Mm.
if you try to say, like,
Fascinating.
hey, Anna, what's going on? Like, it seems like you're disengaged in front of the entire team.
I'd be like, yeah.
Right? Like, that's not actually going to do anything positive. And so
Yeah.
noting it, but then maybe coming back and saying, hey, I noticed in that meeting you weren't as engaged as you typically are. And I just wanted to check in and see how things are, right? Don't assume, just get curious and ask the
I
question
love
and
the curious. Yeah.
yeah, be curious about it. And yeah, I think it's not about judging it. It's not about trying to fix it right away. I think it really is just being curious and asking, right? How are things going?
One
Those
question.
pulse checks, right?
Uh-huh. But
Yeah.
I think I think, like you said, is like if the leader is stressed out or the leader is, moving so fast, I mean, it's got to be pretty easy to miss that and not take the time to be curious.
Yeah.
How do you help clients who may have a challenge with that? It's maybe not natural. And I know we're kind of jumping
Yeah.
into like solve, but I am like, as we're talking about this, I think it's very important to give permission, or I don't know, I'm curious how you coach on this
Yeah.
because I think it's so easy. I put myself in this situation. You got deadlines, you want to check in, like you have good intentions, but you just that little slip of, oh, they're not engaged. I'll follow up with them later. And then you don't. And
Right.
then it starts to really break down.
Yeah. So I have like a really easy fix for this, but then I have like a bigger picture because it's not just this. But I do think for really fast organizations where things are happening really quickly and it's easy to like notice something but then not say anything. If you just have like a little reminder on your calendar, maybe it's every Friday morning, there's like a 30-minute block and it says pulse check, right? And it
Mm,
gives you the space to
easy.
reflect on the week and to go, how have things gone this week? There's a few things that can happen with that. One, you might go, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. But on Tuesday, when I had that conversation with Anna, I was so impressed by her saying these things. I need to give her that positive feedback, right? So it could be positive feedback that
Mm,
you're thinking of.
interesting.
It could
Yeah.
be constructive feedback that you're thinking of. It could also be that exactly what you said. Like, oh, I noticed that in our meeting on Tuesday, Anna wasn't as engaged as she typically is. I'm going to note that in our one-on-one. Or how does she like to receive feedback? How can I give a pulse
Mm,
check for her that's going to be best? Should I send it in an email? Is that going to be better?
mm,
Or should I
hmm.
ask her out loud? But I want to check in with her and just make sure she's good. And then do it during that 30-minute block, right? 30 minutes is a good amount of time to kind of reflect on your week, jot
I
down
like
the couple
that.
of things that come to mind, and then either
Hmm.
put it on one-on-one docs to talk about in the next week, or send the email, right? Send the
Hmm.
email to folks. Maybe this is better on a Monday. I don't know, like whatever works best for people. But
One,
I think,
yeah.
yeah, like that's a really small thing. But I think if it's just the fact that like we're moving so quickly, because I feel this, right? We're moving so quickly, and it can be really challenging to pause and reflect. And I think that's the
Mm,
biggest benefit of coaching is it just gives you that
mm,
space to go, oh, I didn't have anything when I came in this room, but now that I'm thinking about it, I have this challenge coming up and I really should do this and
mm,
I don't know how to approach that, right? And so
mm,
I think that's one thing. I think the other thing that I would say is just normalizing the fact that how our nervous systems work. So when we're stressed, um, our attention and our focus is narrowed. We put our blinders on a little bit.
hmm.
And it's harder to bring in those emotional cues or those be attuned to those emotional cues. Instead, we're more focused on tasks because those our prefrontal cortex is like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm stressed, I'm trying to just focus on the things. And so it's like task oriented, right? Instead of kind of a broader lens of how are people feeling? What is the vibe? All the like
Yep.
soft skills, I'm going to put it in
Yeah.
quotations. Um, but I think I think that's another thing just to like normalize that, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a stressful time of year. As a reminder, it's really easy for us to put our blinders on during this time of year. So I want to urge everyone to check in with your people, check in with your colleagues, make sure folks are feeling good. If there's anything that you can shift, right? Like help each other out. Um, I think
Mm,
again, it's like bringing that human back into the work because when we're
hmm.
stressed, it's like, well, if I just work a little longer, I'll get the to-do list done or my email will be cleared. But we know that it's all going to come back the next day. Like, it's we can do it to ourselves, but we can also do it to people around us. So we can avoid listening to our own body that is like, hey, I need a break. And you're like, yeah, but I just have to get
Yeah.
these things done, right? Because you're stressed. And
Yep.
so you have that narrow focus.
Mm,
So
I
yeah,
really like that.
I think there's a few things there that um, it's normalizing how our bodies work, normalizing humans that we're not machines. And I think sometimes we just need those reminders. I know I need those reminders.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's also finding what works for you in terms of having that space, whether it's having a coach or it's having that space on your calendar.
Hmm.
I think someone mentioned in the chat something about if it's a
Mm.
private calendar or not. And I
Oh, yeah.
love what this person said. She adds additional notes as the week goes by to the calendar event. So as she's going and she
Oh,
notices
that's a good
something, she just
idea.
adds it to the calendar event, right? Which I
Another
love
great
that
idea.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whether you have like your own doc, I always had my
Hmm.
own doc that I could kind of like throughout the week, it was just open on my computer and I had each of my employees, my project team
Mm,
members, my colleagues.
hmm.
And sometimes weeks would go by and nothing was on that list. But sometimes weeks would go by, really stressful periods, and it was like I have, feedback or I have things I want to check in with people on. And then on
Hmm.
Mondays, I would look at that list and I would pull anything I would need as I prepared for my one-on-ones or team meetings or project meetings that week. So play around, I think experimenting a little bit,
Hmm.
finding what works for you. I think it all starts with awareness, though. So if we can be aware of how our nervous systems work, be aware of why is it important to reflect? Why is it important to keep track of these things? That's the starting point. And then look inwards. Why do I avoid this? Do I avoid it because I'm conflict adverse? That would be me. Okay, how do I do this in a way that works for me, right? And how can I just do 5% more, right? It's not about like, oh, I need to change everything that I do, change my whole schedule and, so just doing little bits at a time, that's what cultivates that shift or that change. Um, yeah.
I like that. And you talked about moments at the top of this discussion, and that shapes culture that also can repair it.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
like bring it, yeah, to bring it back through some of these uh little things like a calendar invite to reflect. Um, and I think too, like what it like as you've coached and as you've helped create people, create Because this is a behavioral change. Sometimes leaders or HR leaders or business leaders, anybody who's in that role, about how long does it take to like, I don't know, form a habit or maybe even see, because I think sometimes we can get down on ourselves as leaders. It's like, oh, it's not happening fast enough. And I think
Yeah.
I just want to like briefly talk about that for just a second, because I think we're so easy to get down on ourselves. Like, we're trying this, it's not working. I don't know, just from your
Yeah.
experience, what would you say? How
So
to
I think
answer that?
it's so different for every person. I think that it depends on the level of self-awareness. It depends on that person's motivations. Are they attending these coaching sessions because their manager told them they should attend coaching sessions? Or are they attending the coaching session because they actually really want to make that shift or that change? That makes a
Mm,
big difference in the motivation, that
hmm
the intrinsic motivation someone has. Like, we can have extrinsic motivation and, oh, well, my manager said I
mm,
should do it and I want to do what my manager said. Like, yeah, there's some motivation there. They might show up for coaching sessions, but coaching isn't magic and it's not like I'm doing the work for them. Right. And
true,
so it's a
right.
partnership. And so it really does depend. I have incredible clients who all feel very motivated to grow and be better and show up in a really intentional way. Um, and I think it's also dependent on how people process. I know that for some people, part
Mm.
of the session is me holding up a virtual trash can while they get it all out and like do a little vent sesh, right?
Oh,
And like,
interesting.
oh,
Love
like
that.
now I feel like I can move forward, right? I needed to get all the
Uh-huh.
gunk out of the way in a
Oh,
non-judgmental space, right?
yeah,
Um, and I think that's okay. I don't think it's about like, oh, just button it up and like get over it. Like, we have
yeah.
emotion. Like, let yourself have the emotion. There's a reason for it. It's data. Um, but I
Mm.
think to your question, habits are really interesting. There's a really good book, Atomic Habits
Oh, I do
by
love that book. Yeah.
James Clear. Great book. The thing that really stuck with me with that book that I talk a lot with clients about is habit stacking. So if it's a specific habit that you're trying to add in, how can you stack it with something that you already do? So I'll use an example for my Monday mornings when I would have that, I'd go back and I'd look at my notes and I'd prep for my week. That
hmm
started as just prepping for my week. I have a lot of anxiety. I have Sunday scaries. And so if I know that like I'm coming into the office and on Monday morning, I'm not meeting with anyone for the first hour, it's just sitting down, getting prepared for my week, looking at my to-do
mm
list, updating my emails. Like, if
mm
I know I have that kind of prep time or that transition time, I had less of the Sunday scaries. And I still
mm
use this. Like, I still do this even with my business. But then
mm.
habit stacking for me with that was once I started having this doc, which I learned from someone else I worked with. They were like, oh, I was like, I just can't keep track of everything. My team was growing and their teams were growing, and it was happening so fast. And it
mm.
was one of those, big wig tech people that came in, and I was like, I'm overwhelmed. And they were like, oh, this is how I do it. And I was like, oh, that's so organized. Like, I want to be that organized. And so it allowed me to I was able to habit stack on that Monday morning meeting from
Mm,
with myself, right? And so I was able to go, okay, well, in addition to like looking at my emails and getting my action items set up, um, I'm going to also look at my list from the week. And it took a little bit for me to remember. I think I don't quite remember, but I'm sure I probably put some reminders throughout the week when I was first starting that. Like, do you have anything? Maybe it was like at the
keep
end of
it.
every day. Do you have
Oh,
anything to
yeah.
add to your note stock?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Like, was there anything
Yeah.
from today that you want to add? And then it became more of a habit and more of a habit. And sometimes I wouldn't write
Mm.
anything on it. And then Monday morning meeting would come and it would be like prep for my week. And I was like, oh, I remember some
Eh,
things from last week that I want to write down. Right. So I think be
yeah.
patient with yourself. I do think that change doesn't happen by reinventing yourself all at once. Um, that's actually not how change happens. It's like the opposite. Your body gets overwhelmed by that and it'll go back to old patterns, and then you get stuck in those old patterns. And so if you
Mm,
notice that you have a pattern that you want to adjust, go back to that 5%.
mm,
What's the 5% shift that you can make? And then give yourself a week and then check in with
mm.
compassion, right? Like, I think that's the other thing that we sometimes do is we're like, I don't know, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it's easy for me to go, well, I should. Well,
Yeah.
instead, being able to go, huh, that didn't work very well for me this week. Why didn't it work very well? The same curiosity that you would give to others, give that like non-judgmental, compassionate curiosity to yourself, where you're like, why didn't that work for me?
Yeah.
Because what works for me isn't going to work for everybody else. And I think that's the other part that comes out in coaching. And when I said like everyone is different, I think
Mm,
it's really about figuring out what are your patterns? What's your
hmm
intention? What's the ideal look like? And then let's experiment a little bit. There's times when, like,
hmm
I have a plethora of ideas, the ADHD. Um, and so I might share something. I'm like, ooh, let's try this. And they're like, that will never work for me. Like, all right, trash that one. Let's move on to the next one. Right. And so it's like some of it's ideation and just figuring out like what are some options? How can someone try something and then
hmm
check in and go, "Ooh, that actually worked really well. I could be better at it, but I liked how it worked. So now I'm going to try and implement it more often, or I'm going to, whatever that might be." But
mm.
I think that's the biggest part of it is, again, it's hard to do that if you don't give yourself the space to kind of reflect on your own patterns, how you want to show
Yeah.
up, and make that part of
Right.
the plan. It's the new year, so it's a good time too to kind
Perfect
of
time.
be,
Yep.
yeah, curious with
Perfect
yourself.
time. It's perfect
Yeah.
time to be curious to yourself and have these conversations, these design, I'm keep saying it out loud so I remember the
Yeah.
design alliance conversations.
Absolutely.
Because that sets the tone for the year. I think with your team, it probably helps protect the psychological safety that's already been established. Um, I am curious as you know, if I'm a leader or people on this call are like, yes, I want to start doing this. Like sometimes, and just to hit back on the feedback, it's like sometimes feedback can, as you're learning how your employees or other teammates want to receive it, you're not going to get it
Mhm.
right. So, of course, you want
Right.
to have patience with yourself. Um,
Yeah.
but what happens and let's just talk about the leader. How do you, as a
Yeah.
leader, tell when feedback didn't hit right? Or how do you coach between employees who aren't, aligning and they're trying to give like everyone wants to move in the same direction and
Yeah.
assuming the safety has been established, but you're starting to see it slip. Like,
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, how do you coach those different scenarios?
Yeah. I think reinforcing shared goals, coming back together. When you build a presentation, you're always supposed to have, or like a speaking engagement, like a TED talk or whatever. They always have like a hook at the very beginning that like gets everyone to nod along and they're like, yeah, 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 yeah. Right.
Uh-huh.
Finding those shared goals is kind of like the hook. So
Okay.
maybe there's two employees that just really don't get along and they have different personalities, they process differently, they communicate differently, and they just don't get along. And maybe they've both tried and both of them are like, ah, this person is driving me nuts, right? Like it just isn't working.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think, what can you agree on? Maybe you can't agree on how to go about this part of this project, but can you agree on some part of the success of the project or the next step or how it's impacting the broader organization? So I think it does, whether it's two employees or it's a group of employees, maybe you're noticing less engagement, maybe you're noticing some tension on the team. Maybe, again, it doesn't matter how many people there are. I think, first of all, just naming it. Hey, I've noticed some of this tension, or I've noticed some of these things. I just want to check in, right? And checking in with individuals. It gives you more information, pulling in that curiosity. Um, and helping people feel heard. I think that's another piece of this. Like our
Mm,
nervous systems feel safe or safer, maybe not fully safe, but safer when we feel heard, when we have that space to feel heard without judgment. And
mm,
also when we have a choice. So,
mm,
that, like I said before, like maybe you say something, or maybe it's a difficult topic, right? Like I was doing some work for a tech company when I first started consulting, and we were doing anti-discrimination trainings and building out the training. And there was some really challenging stuff that we had to look at and talk about. And as a white cis woman, um, I was feeling uncomfortable. It was a very
Mm,
diverse room of people. Um, and so I felt it immediately and was like, I feel so uncomfortable. So I just paused and I was like, this is a hard topic. And if anyone's feeling uncomfortable, that's totally normal. I know I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I called it out. I was like, I'm a white cis woman and we're talking about anti-discrimination. This is not something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Maybe as a woman, but not to
mm,
the extent that some of the other people have in this room. And so, first of all, I want to call that out and have all of us just kind of take a collective breath and pause for a minute. We're all safe in this space. Um, and then number two, giving people the choice. So calling it out and then giving people the choice. Is
mm,
this something that we want to come back to? We can go in this direction and come back to this, or we can continue. But continuing to kind of take baby steps and check in along the way. Um, that helps make our nervous system feel safe rather
mm.
than feeling the tension, but like it's just the ride is still going and I am on it and I can't stop it. And, like that's anxiety
Yeah.
riddling. Um, so yeah, I think it's reinforcing shared goals. Hey, we're here to talk about this. We're here to create this end product. Here's how it's going to impact the organization. But this is a really challenging topic, and it's okay if it feels uncomfortable. How do we want to move forward? Right. So
Love
I think
that.
that's a big piece of it. I think also when it is two people, the slippery slope that I've seen in the past is like, oh, let's just shut these two people in a room and have them duke it out. And
I
that
have
never
heard
works
people,
well.
yes, I've heard of that happening.
Yeah, like there's a
Mm,
bit of like there's preparation that needs to happen, right? Making sure both
mhm,
parties feel heard, making sure there's a framework for the discussion. It's going to feel awkward. It's always awkward when you have like you're following a framework. Like I know that still when I give constructive feedback to someone, um,
mm,
I state my intention first. Why am I giving the
mm,
feedback? What's the purpose of me sharing this information? What's my intention, right? What's the
mhm,
situation? What's the behavior that I noticed? And what's the impact that it had? And then following it up with some curiosity. How does that land for you? How do you feel about that? And giving them the space to talk, right? It's still a framework. And I feel a little bit like, okay, my intention is, right? Like, it just, I feel awkward. And so I might call that out and say, like, I have a little bit of feedback. This is my intention in giving it. I always feel a little awkward giving feedback, but I have some notes here I just want to walk through because I really want to make sure this lands in the best way possible. Right? Like,
mhm,
no one's going to be mad at you for looking at your notes and like trying to go through something that you've prepped. And so that goes for where you're repairing something or
mm,
helping two other people repair something. Um, and co-regulation, I think, is also something that is really important before cognitive resolution is even possible. Like,
mm,
I chatted with a client recently who has a difficult conversation that they have to have this week with an employee. And we talked a little bit about like, it seems silly, but like before you go into that conversation, you already have everything prepared, like what you're going to say, right?
mm,
But before you go into it, feel both of your feet firmly on the ground. Take a moment to take a
mm,
breath. Calm your body. Notice if you're holding your shoulders. Just like try to release some
mm,
tension. Remind yourself of what your intention is walking into this conversation, right? Like, I want to bring in the humanity in this conversation. I want to be kind in this conversation, but I also want to make sure that I get through the things that I need to get through, which are some difficult topics.
mhm.
And just give yourself 30 seconds to just ground
Take
because
it,
the
take it.
that vibe, the same way that you walk into a
Yeah,
room and you're like, ooh, the tension, I feel it. People can also feel if they walk into a room
yeah.
and someone goes, hey, I know this isn't the conversation either of us really want to have today. It's a hard conversation to have,
Mm,
but here's why it's important. Here's my intention during our conversation today. Right. If you come in with that vibe rather than like, all right, so, I know this isn't what we want to do today, but, we have to do it because of these reasons. Like I'm saying the same
Oh,
thing.
yeah,
The
but
vibe is very
it
different.
feels different. It feels different as I'm receiving
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
more human way versus, yeah, it's a checkbox and here we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that because it's the preparation is key here.
Yeah.
You can have the right framework, you can have everything, but like you said, if you're not prepped going in, then it's not
Mhm.
going to land and you're going to miss that moment, that micro moment that's going to now turn into a very big thing that
Yeah.
might make or break the repairing that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And just real quick, the formula for
Yeah,
that preparation, because I
yeah.
think sometimes people are like, well, I don't know how to prep. And so then they get stuck and then they don't prep. Um, this is literally a coaching framework that I use almost every day is okay, what's your intention? So looking at where do you want to go? What's the ideal
Hmm.
state? Paint that picture for me. How do you feel? How does the other person or the other people feel? Right? What is
Hmm.
paint the vision, right? Kind of like what you would do in professional sports. Picture yourself winning the trophy, right? Making that final basket and winning. You make all your free
Yeah.
throws and you win the trophy and all the things, right? So like
Hmm.
really getting someone to visualize that
Mm.
and to say it out loud. Like what is the intention? Because I think sometimes we think we know what well, I just want it to go well. What does that mean?
What
What
does
does
that
go well
actually mean?
mean?
Yeah.
Right. And then figure out where are we starting from. So we've defined where, because coaching is just literally helping someone get from point A to point B. So what is
Mm.
point B? Where are we going? Where are we now on the map? And then being able, some people like to work backwards, some people like to work forwards, some people,
Mm.
I work in a constellation, so it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then I put it all in order. Um, but I think that's really what coaching is. And so whether you do that on your own or you have a coach support you with that process,
Mm.
as a coach, I have a coach because it's so helpful to have someone else who is
Mm.
like a third party who's not invested in the same way, who doesn't have the same emotions to kind of help
Mhm.
me pull myself out of the weeds and see the forest from the trees and go, oh, this is where I
Mm.
want to go. This is where I am now. Okay, here's my plan. And all of a sudden, my prep is now done. And it probably took less time than if I tried to do it on my own.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why everyone needs a coach like you. It's like you're not involved in the politics, I will call it,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
motion of the day to day that a business is trying to achieve. And so having someone with, with that mindset to get you from point A to point B, no matter how you're doing it and however your leaders need to get there, love that you're just so adaptable in that way. And you approach it just so scientific, but with heart. You talk
Mm.
about like the the capabilities of our nervous system, but with the human heart of like, hey, you have to adjust and be fluid. So, Kiki, you've been
Yeah.
fantastic. I can't. I just looked at the time and I was like, where did it go? And
I
this
don't
is
know.
always how it is. This is always how it is. So, just as a quick like wrap up, what would you
Mhm.
say, like just one small thing that our audience here could take today and go and do if they are
Yeah.
seeing and evaluating their team slipping? What would just be like one quick action?
I think, especially as leaders, introducing some sort of a sentence of intention or permission for your team. If something lands wrong, I want us to be able to name it and repair it so we can all move forward in an aligned and productive way. Again, that's a great hook, right? Everyone's going to be like, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, we want that. Everyone wants to move
Yeah.
forward in an aligned and productive way. And just remembering that it's not about avoiding conflict. Conflict is actually a sign that there's engagement. It's about repairing conflict with intention. Um, I think leaders can model in these micro repair moments in one on ones. Hey, I don't think that went as well as it could have. How could we do it better next time? I'd love to hear your perspective, right? Um, Checking in with people, just doing those pulse checks that we talked about. And I think the main
Hmm.
thing to remember is that psychological safety isn't really about comfort. I think we conflate those
Mm.
things
Yeah.
sometimes. It's more about building trust during the discomfort,
Mm.
if that
Oh,
makes
I like
sense.
that. Yeah, I like that. You see me taking notes right now? Yes.
I love it.
Name it so you can repair it.
Yes.
I think that's so important. Normalizing that. Like yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
This has
And
been
it's,
incredible. Where do people go to learn more about you and what you do? Um,
my website is thrivemindcollaborative.com. It's like the longest thing ever. But it's Thrive Mind. It's a play on Hive Mind, but thriving, right? Thrive Mind and then collaborative.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. It's free. I do micro series. I just started those last year and people seem to really like them. They're just little, kind of a
So
5%. The one that's actually going out on Thursday this week, you still have time to sign up, is talking
cool.
about that 5%, making those 5% habits. So exactly what
Hmm.
we talked about earlier. Um, and yeah, you can contact me from there as well. Definitely let me know if you have additional questions. If there's, I know we totally like ran up on time. I saw some things in the chat. So if we want to save the chat, I'm more than happy to reach out to folks or share answers to questions that came up if we didn't get to them. But feel free to reach out. You can always email me, ask questions there. You don't have to hire me to ask questions. So please feel free to reach out anytime. And thank you so much again for having me, Anna. This has just been so fun. I have really enjoyed these conversations, um, and I hope they're helpful.
100%. Yeah, this has been incredible. Well, yes, hopefully you all go check out Kiki and learn more, sign up for your newsletter. I'm going to go do that. I didn't know I could do that, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, if you haven't joined our community, please do that. But I know we're over time, so I'll let you guys all go back to enjoy your day. It's free to join our community. You can continue the conversation with other HR leaders who are in there, and it's a non-judgment, sharing tips and tricks type of community. So thanks, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.